Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. We're going to get into something pretty interesting today. What it takes to be a wholesale merchant in textiles.
Yeah,
You guys sent us a ton of RoleCatcher resources on this, so clearly you're ready to go beyond the surface level.
absolutely.
And trust me, we found some seriously cool stuff digging through all this.
It's a really interesting field, yeah.
So, to kick things off, maybe you can help us set the scene a bit. What's the quick elevator pitch for this role? What does a wholesale merchant actually do all day?
It's funny. Most
Ah.
people, they don't realize they're practically wearing a wholesale merchant's decisions every day.
Interesting.
The fabric of your shirt, how it feels, the quality, even how much you paid for it.
Yeah.
A lot of that can be traced back to the choices these wholesale merchants are making behind the scenes.
Okay, I'm already getting unsung hero vibes from this.
Yeah.
But for those of us who haven't spent much time in the textile world, let's back up a sec.
Sure.
RoleCatcher describes them as being the link between, the companies who actually make textiles and then all the businesses who sell those textiles to, well, the rest of us.
Exactly, yeah.
So is this like a giant matching game? What's the day-to-day look like?
It's more like high space puzzle, I'd say, with like global implications.
Okay, so it's intense.
Because it's not just about, cotton versus silk versus the latest synthetics. It's the whole chain from literally the raw materials to the final product that ends up on shelves.
So knowing the difference between Egyptian cotton versus like Pima cotton, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. A good wholesale merchant, they need to know where each material comes from, like literally what makes that cotton unique, how prices could change.
Well, wow.
They're constantly analyzing market trends, probably thinking a year ahead about what'll be in demand, and then they're making deals that work for everyone involved.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking fashion fortune teller on top of everything else.
Yeah,
And RoleCatcher, they definitely emphasized the strong negotiation skills part
oh, for sure.
and deep market understanding, obviously. But then they also mentioned persuasion and social perceptiveness, which I got to admit, that surprised me.
And it makes total sense, though, when you think about it.
So,
This business is all about relationships. Building them, maintaining them, that's key. A wholesale merchant might be on the phone with a supplier in India one day, and then the next they're having dinner with a buyer from, like, Milan,
so it's not enough to just crunch numbers and know your fabrics inside and out.
Nope.
You got to be able to read people, understand different cultures, build that trust across continents.
Exactly. These are the people who keep the entire textile world spinning, literally.
Yeah. Wow.
They're the connectors, the negotiators, and at the end of the day, they make sure there's enough to meet demand.
Okay, so we've got this blend of business smarts and serious people skills. But RoleCatcher also mentioned some kind of tech revolution that's happening in the industry.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
What's changing, and how does that impact what a wholesale merchant does on a daily basis?
It's changing, honestly, everything. Imagine this. Instead of flying to trade shows, you're using AI-powered platforms, analyzing global textile trends, predicting maybe like merino wool from a specific region will be short in 6 months.
Oh,
And you're using all that to adjust your whole sourcing strategy from your office.
okay, that's next level stuff. So it's not even just about knowing your fabrics. You've got to analyze data to make these smart decisions in a market that never sits still.
100%.
Oh.
They might use data to negotiate a better price, find a new supplier when, say, there's some political instability somewhere, or even predict when a specific kind of fabric will suddenly be super in demand.
So data analysis is like their crystal ball, helping them see into the future of this constantly shifting landscape.
You got it.
That's amazing.
And you need the right tools for that, right? Like any expert.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's another place where being tech savvy is huge.
Makes sense.
Online marketplaces, that's how they're connecting with suppliers all over.
Yeah.
Logistics software to track where every shipment is in real time.
Smart.
Even data visualization stuff so they can show those market insights to their clients in a way that makes sense.
Okay, so we're talking a seriously impressive tech setup.
Oh, yeah.
Not just like checking emails and hoping for the best.
Definitely not.
And speaking of skills, RoleCatcher actually gave us some really interesting interview questions that potential wholesale merchants might get hit with.
Oh, yeah, those interviews can be tough.
Right.
But they're designed to, make sure you're passionate, that you actually know your stuff and how you think on your feet.
Totally, because even with all the data and tech in the world, you still got to nail that in-person or, I guess, video call impression.
Exactly.
So what kind of questions should someone be ready for? What are they going to ask?
One that comes up a lot is, tell me about a time you had to deal with a major supply chain problem.
Oh, that's a good one. It feels like we're hearing about those more and more lately.
With factories shutting down, then there's weird weather.
It's always something.
Exactly, and that's where a wholesale merchant, that's where their problem solving, it's essential. They might need to find a whole new supplier, like yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Maybe renegotiate contracts, get creative, find different materials, all while keeping their clients in the loop and, making sure everyone's expectations are realistic.
Talk about thinking on your feet. It's
Yeah.
not even about having a plan B. It's like having plans C through Z ready to go.
Exactly. Adaptable, resourceful, always thinking ahead. That's what makes a good wholesale merchant.
Okay, so that's handling the unexpected. But what about proving that deep market knowledge that RoleCatcher talks about?
Right.
What kind of question would really reveal if someone has that?
How about this? Analyze the impact of, let's say, a huge sudden spike in demand for organic cotton.
Ooh, that's a big one.
How would that affect the whole global textile market?
Okay, so it's a real-world economics problem.
Yeah.
But with these, ethical layers woven in.
Exactly. A good candidate, they'll talk about things like how many organic cotton farms are even out there? Could prices go way up? How long will things take, lead times?
Yeah.
And even what if there's not enough? Do we switch back to regular cotton? What are the ethics of that?
Wow, so it is not even just knowing facts. It's about connecting those dots.
Exactly.
Seeing the big picture and the little details.
That's what sets someone apart.
It's like being a textile detective and a market strategist all in one.
You got it.
Okay, that's problem-solving market knowledge. But what about those people skills we talked about? How could you show that in an interview?
Right. RoleCatcher makes a big deal about building those strong relationships. So a classic question is, describe a time you had to convince a client to accept a solution that wasn't, ideal.
Ooh, that's tough. Nobody likes delivering bad news.
Exactly. And that's where how you communicate, it's everything.
Totally.
Be transparent, be empathetic, but also you've got to offer other options and stay positive. Like you've got a solution, even if it's not perfect.
Right. It's that balance of honesty, but also diplomacy.
Exactly.
You're not just dumping bad news on them. You're giving choices, managing expectations, and hopefully saving that relationship.
Exactly. A good negotiation, both sides should feel like they got something good.
So you need to know the industry, think fast, and have, a high EQ.
Oh, basically.
That's a lot. But let's say you nail the interview, you get the job. What's the career path look like from there?
So RoleCatcher, they have a pretty clear progression,
Okay, good to know.
starting with entry-level stuff like assistant buyer, junior wholesale merchant.
So you're learning the ropes, helping out the more senior people, probably drinking lots of coffee.
Probably. But those early years, those are crucial.
Oh, for sure.
You're figuring out different fabrics, how sourcing actually works in the real world, what the pace is like.
It's like any apprenticeship. You're proving yourself, soaking up knowledge.
Exactly.
So what comes after those first few roles?
As you get some experience under your belt, build up your contacts, you might become a full-on wholesale merchant.
Okay, making the big decisions.
Right, you're managing your own accounts now, bigger deals, maybe even you find a niche.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe a specific kind of textile you become an expert in, or a certain market you really understand.
So you're not just along for the ride anymore. You're the one kind of steering the ship.
100%. And then, if you're a natural leader,
Yeah.
you could become a senior wholesale merchant. You're mentoring the newer folks, coming up with the whole sourcing strategy.
Wow, so you're not just a textile master. You're like a mentor, a strategist, leading the way.
That's the path.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, speaking of all this, remember earlier we talked about textile, semi-finished, and raw materials.
Right.
That feels like a whole other layer of, expertise.
It is.
I mean, I get raw materials, like cotton, wool, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But what makes something semi-finished in the textile world?
So it's a really key stage. Imagine you find this incredible merino wool. Comes from Australia.
Okay, nice wool.
Top quality, that's your raw material. But a wholesale merchant might then work with, say, a spinning mill.
Okay.
Maybe it's a really specialized one in Italy. And they turn that wool into a really specific yarn.
Fancy?
Yeah, like a cashmere blend, super luxurious for some high-end designer.
I see.
That yarn, now it's semi-finished.
So it's not raw anymore, but it's not something I could, like, wear yet.
Exactly, like the middle child of the textile world or something.
Like that.
And a wholesale merchant, they need to know how to handle all of it. Different fibers, different treatments, how those affect the price, the quality.
Oh, sure.
And of course, the ethical side of things, too.
Which, speaking of that, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention sustainability.
Huge, yeah.
Because that's something shoppers really care about these days. Eco-friendly, ethical sourcing.
It's not just a trend, it's how things are done now.
So how does a wholesale merchant navigate that? How do they make sure they're finding those materials?
It's a core part of the job now. A good wholesale merchant, they're not just thinking about profit, right? They're thinking about the planet, about people, like how much water is used to grow this cotton. How are the animals treated for wool? What are the conditions in those factories?
So you have to understand the whole story behind the fabric.
Yeah, the impact it has from start to finish.
Wow, so it's not just finding the cheapest option.
Definitely not anymore.
It's really making choices that have a ripple effect.
That's the thing.
It all goes back to what you said earlier, unsung hero, right?
Yeah.
They might not be the ones on the runway or designing the clothes.
Yeah.
Their decisions make a huge difference in what we wear, but also the world around us.
It's all connected.
It really is.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like we've learned so much.
It's a fascinating field.
So to sum it up, being a wholesale merchant, it's this mix of like knowing the market, being tech savvy, working with people, and having a strong sense of ethics.
And being able to roll with the punches because things change fast.
Always adapting.
So if anyone listening is thinking, this sounds amazing, maybe this is your path.
I'd say dive into those RoleCatcher resources.
Yeah, great place to start.
Talk to people in the industry, see where it takes you.
That's such good advice. And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
Till next time, everyone, keep learning, keep exploring, keep asking those awesome questions,